Welcome to the Kendall MMA full card prediction and breakdown for Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis 2. In this live stream / video today, I'm going to go through the entire card and go through my predictions for him. And this is a live stream as well. So if you want to join these live streams, tune in. I plan on making this every Monday thing from now on. I want to do this at the start of the week while I do the full card prediction and breakdown, and then just chop it up and edit it later and post it onto the video or onto the YouTube channel. So let's dive into this real quick. We have the prelim opener of Melissa Tonya Mullins versus Nora Cornolle. Wow. What a great fight this is. Women's fights. I'm taking Melissa Tonya Mullins. I don't care. It is what it is. Women's fights. We don't care. Nobody cares. I'll take her by decision because that's how women's fights go. Again, if I could be a ref, I would only do women's fights. But yeah, pretty much it. They're both, I guess, pretty decent. 6-0, 7-1. You know, they have some I guess future maybe, but that's how it is for every single women's fighter when they first come into the UFC and they lose to some random weirdo that they shouldn't lose to, and they have no more hype anymore. So it is what it is. Melissa Tonya Mullins wins. Moving on up the card, Dylan Budka versus Cesar Almeida. God, man, these fight nights are actually kind of wicked, bro, aren't they? Honestly, like, who do you guys think's gonna win this? Just let me ask you guys real quick. It's 65-35% on topology here. I mean, Dylan Budka won the Contender Series, beat a 9-2 guy in Chad Hanekom. Not too bad. I mean, beat a 2-4 guy as well. Lost to a 15-3 guy in LFA. LFA is a good promotion as well, though. 3-0, 2-0. Like, he's not fighting the best competition, but he is only 7-2. While Cesar Almeida, like, 9-1 guy. He's 4-0. Like, his record's not that great. He's 9-1. He beat him. He beat a 15-28-1 guy by KO 2 years ago. That's actually abysmal. You can't be like, why are you fighting a 5-2? Why are you fighting a journeyman? 0-0. 0-0. Only has 4 fights in his career. He's 36 years old. I'm not taking him. I'm taking Dylan Budka here. Like, I just, that right there tells me all I need to know. I'm taking him by decision, but that's all I need to know. I just don't like a guy who is 36 years old, who's fighting journeyman in his third fight in his career, and he's in the UFC already after fighting the Contender Series. I mean, I guess middleweight's dry with competition here. Almeida has bad takedown defense, and Budka was a former state champ, a wrestler, and college wrestler before he got kicked out. I mean, I guess so, yeah. Former wrestler. Yeah, I think he should. Yeah, he probably should out-wrestle Almeida here. I think even excluding the wrestling background for Budka, just looking at his record, like, yeah, he beat a guy on decision, Lucas Fernando, 9-1, whatever. He beat him in the Contender Series, but before that, he beat a 5-28 Danilo Souza, and whatever promotion this is, Professional Shuto Brazil. Like, no way. Now we have, how do you say this name? Jean Matsumoto? Is it Jean or Jean? I'm gonna say Jean. Jean Matsumoto versus Dan Argueta. Dan Argueta has had a draw with Miles Johns. And Miles Johns is like, I wouldn't call Miles Johns bottom feeder level. And Ronnie Lawrence, about the premature stoppage. But he looked pretty good against Ronnie Lawrence, I ain't gonna lie. But Miles Johns, it's like, yeah, you know, Miles Johns is good, but he's not like amazing. Always going to be mid-level in the UFC, unranked. And Jean Matsumoto's 14-0. He beat a guy in Contender Series. He beat Casey Tanner, 7-0 guy. LFA, 9-1. LFA, no, it's just Fight Pro, 9-3, 13-6. It's okay, but he's a -205 favorite. Like, I just think that Jean Matsumoto looks like he has fucking talent, I guess. And Dan Argueta isn't bad, but he's just like, again, I think he's like mid-level. You know, he's kind of a big bantamweight. Dan Argueta, not a small guy whatsoever. He's kind of jacked, kind of built for bantamweight, so he probably can get it done. But I don't know. I don't like his performances against Miles Johns, which got overturned. Originally a win for Johns. The result of the fight was later changed to a no contest when he tested positive for elevated levels of Turinabol. A few weeks later, the NSAC changed their thresholds, but the decision did not impact the time of John's fight. So now I don't really feel that bad for De La Guerra losing to Miles Johns. I know it's a draw now, but he was on roids, I guess. So it isn't that bad that De La Guerra lost to him by unanimous decision. But then again, I still don't think Miles Johns is that good. Yeah, I'm taking John Matsumoto. I think De La Guerra is tough enough to survive, but I'm taking Matsumoto by decision here. I just think that he's going to be better than Dan Argueta, who lost to Miles Johns on roids, to be fair, but losing to Miles Johns, I still think is a testament of not having that much good of skill. Oh my God. Moving on to Cynthia Calvillo versus Piera Rodriguez. Oh my God, Calvillo is actually dog water. She quit in her last fight, I'm pretty sure, against Lupe Godinez. I think she quit. Did she quit? I'm pretty sure in some fight she quit. Was it the Andrea Lee fight? I don't remember which one it was, but she quit in a certain fight. But she's on look at this loss streak for Cynthia Calvillo. At least a 5-fight losing streak. Lost to Caitlin Chukagian, or Sermonara is her new name now. That's ridiculous. I don't think you should be losing 5 fights in a row at women's strawweight. And Piera Rodriguez probably isn't that good. I mean, Jillian Robertson isn't bad on the ground. She isn't bad at all. But Calvillo should be cut from the sport, right? How is she not cut? Exactly. She should be cut from the sport. What's up, Assault Driver? She has 5 losses in a row. Like, it's pretty bad. She's also 36. She has a reach advantage over Piera Rodriguez, but there's just no way you can actually fully pick Calvillo. She's on too big of a loss streak. I just don't trust her to beat anybody anymore in the UFC. Is Kendall a soy boy? No. But yeah, I'm taking Piera Rodriguez here. There's no way you can logically pick Cynthia Calvillo on at least 5-fight losing streak. She's trash. She's giving up in her fights. She's not losing terribly, like losing to Lupi by split decision and losing to Nina Nunes by split decision are not good losses, and you should be beating those girls or those women. But again, she's not getting full-on dominated in her losses, besides, getting KO'd by Jessica Andrade. But moving on to the next fight on this trash card, we have Norma Dumont versus Germaine de Randamie. I'm taking Dumont here. You know why I'm taking her? She just looks better than Germaine de Randamie. That's all I need to tell you. That's all I need to say. She just looks better. She is better. It is what it is. Norma Dumont is decent at fighting, I guess. She's not crazy. Germaine de Randamie is almost 40 years old. No, I think with women it's a bit different because obviously with men, we have testosterone loss as we get older. But is this at bantamweight? It is at bantamweight. So Dumont is moving down. I don't know how she's gonna make weight. She probably can make weight. She is 5'7", so she is kind of a big girl. But then again, Germaine de Randamie is 5'9", so I don't know. Taking Norma Dumont. She's moving down. She has more experience, I guess. Not really technically on record, but she has more experience in the UFC, I believe. Oh yeah, and also forgot. No, you're right. I also forgot. Germaine de Randamie has not fought in 3.5 years. 3.5 years of being off the sport, almost 40 years old, fighting Norma Dumont, who's been relatively active. Hasn't fought in 8 months, but she's kind of been active before that. She was fighting pretty often. Been in the UFC for a while. I just don't like a woman who hasn't fought in 3.5 years and is 40 years old coming back into the UFC from retiring, from probably not training hard over those 3.5 years to fight a girl who's been training actively to become a champion. So what if it was a man? I would probably still take the person who's active in the UFC. But we're taking Norma Dumont here. I'm not picking a girl who's hasn't fought in 3.5 years and was retired to beat a person who was active. Moving on. Up the card, we have Court McGee versus Alex Morono. I'm taking Morono here. He's actually pretty decent. He has no muscle mass, which is an issue, but Morono's actually pretty good, right? He's not that bad. He's not an awful fighter. I think he was beating Ponzinibbio pretty clearly before getting KO'd by overhand right. He was up, I think, 3 rounds, and then he just got KO'd out of nowhere. It sucks. Joaquin Buckley he lost to, which is pretty sad, but not looking that terrible in hindsight now because Joaquin Buckley is now ranked at welterweight. Tim Means is dog shit. Simmelsberger, he beat Simmelsberger which I guess is pretty good for the fact that he can, survive Simmelsberger. He got hurt a few times against Simmelsberger, but it wasn't like he still was able to tough through that and win. So like Morono is pretty decent on the feet. He's a striking coach, I believe, at his gym. So he is a coach as well. While Court McGee is 40 years old. He's over the hill. He's 21-12. He hasn't fought in almost a year. It's been 10 months. Lost to Matt Brown, old man Matt Brown. Lost to Jeremiah Wells, who is athletic, but this guy has not been very active. Court McGee, he's asking to get chinned. He took a really bad KO against Jeremiah Wells as well. Like, he got put out cold pretty badly. I just don't trust Court McGee to get a win against Morono, who is pretty scrappy on the feet. He's pretty technical. Even like, it looks terrible, like his technical striking. Like, it's not the best, but like, he knows how to strike on the feet, and I think he can probably sit there and just tag up Court McGee for 3 rounds. I think it's pretty simple. This is probably a pretty easy pick. I think if you're picking Court McGee, you're just doing off of a hunch. Let's be real here, but let's move on to an actual, I think, pretty exciting fight that has potential. Trevor Peek versus Charlie Campbell. This is actually going to be a sick fight. If you don't know who Trevor Peek is, learn up on Trevor Peek. This dude is exciting to watch fight. I know he lost to Chepe Mariscal, but like, the thing about Trevor Peek is that he's not going to wow you with his technical ability. He's not going to, pump a jab, a 1-2, and be super, technical on the feet and just have like a really aesthetically pleasing style to watch. He's going to rain down standing hammer fist and just try to KO you with anything possible. And Charlie Campbell is actually pretty decent. Like, he's not bad. He lost to Chris Duncan, but he did hurt Chris Duncan in that Contender Series fight. And I don't think Charlie Campbell is really that bad at all. I am worried about his chin against Trevor Peek, and I want to pick Trevor Peek, and he probably can, probably beat. I think on, if I'm picking this about who is better, who is more technical, I think it is Charlie Campbell, but Trevor Peek is just that kind of guy who can put your lights out because he throws anything and everything. Doesn't matter what it is. If he hurts you at any point, he's going to just spam whatever it is that might land on your face, and that's kind of different when you're trying to survive versus somebody. Like, if you're trying to survive a Adesanya who hurts you, you're more worried about him, you're worried about getting tagged or getting countered when you're hurt. With Trevor Peek, it's like, what is he going to throw next at me? Like, is he going to throw a standing hammer fist, a body kick? He might do a spinning elbow. Like, what is he going to throw at me while I'm hurt? I don't know what he's going to do. While with somebody else, you're probably going to know what they're going to do. They're just trying to counter shot you pretty much against the cage. So, if Charlie Campbell gets hurt, I think he does lose to Trevor Peek. But does Charlie Campbell get hurt? He's open on the feet, man. He's open on the feet. And I want to pick Trevor Peek, man. I like Trevor Peek. He's pretty good. Like, losing to Chepe Mariscal is kind of a bad matchup for him, I think. Mariscal is more of that kind of guy who fights on the outside. Like, he's kind of a bad style matchup for Trevor Peek. Has a good chin as well. It's just a tough matchup for Trevor Peek. Charlie Campbell doesn't have that chin, not the style of Chepe Mariscal. Like, I'm gonna take Trevor Peek by KO, but I am worried, man. And I kind of want to pick the better fighter, which I do believe is Charlie Campbell. Campbell just got reckless against Duncan. I got Charlie over inbred Peek. You think so? I mean, he did hurt Duncan. He was trying to finish him, and then he got finished back. So it's kind of yeah, maybe if Campbell does hurt Peek, he might get a bit reckless and get counter-shotted by Peek as well. So it's kind of it's who do you trust more? You know what? I'm gonna take Charlie Campbell. He's a minus 225 favorite. That's for a reason, I guess. I think Charlie Campbell is the better fighter than Trevor Peek, but I think Peek is tough enough to survive a decision at least. Peek is strong, tough, he's wild, he's a fun fighter to watch. You have to watch his fights back. They're always fun. But I'm going to take him. I'm going to take Campbell to beat him. I think he just is the better fighter. and he only really lost to Chris Duncan because he got too crazy. I agree with you, Cranium. He got a little bit too wild against Chris Duncan, going for a finish, and got finished himself. If that fight happens again in that same scenario, probably Campbell beats him 9 times out of 10. He beats Chris Duncan in that exact same fight, if he does hurt him at least. But we'll go ahead. We'll take Charlie Campbell to win. I think he beats Trevor Peek because he is just better. Moving on up the card, we have Lukas Brzeski versus Valter Walker. What a name that is. Brzeski's trash. Valter Walker wins. KO first round. It is heavyweight. All these heavyweights are pretty trash. Like, they're just pretty bad heavyweights. Never really have any good heavyweights that come into the UFC. But he's young. He's 26. Lukas Brzeski. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. Hasn't won a fight. Like, he's won in 3 out of his last 5. He had 1 draw mixed in there, which I think got overturned. Which I believe, did he lose that? I think he lost. No, he won that fight. I think he got reversed. But losing to Martin Bidet, losing to Carl Williams, not that bad in hindsight, but still, losing to Waldo Cortez Acosta, not that bad. I don't know. But Valter Walker, I think, is I don't know. Like, he's just going to be a better, there's more hope for him than Lukas Brzeski. They have their exact reaches on there, which it's a 81.1 inch reach for Valter Walker and a 78.3 inch reach for Lukas Brzeski. I don't know why it's that. Maybe it's because we have a different measuring system in the United States, so maybe that's why there's such an exact reach. But again, Lukas Brzeski 8-4-1. What is he in the UFC like? I don't think he's won a fight in the UFC yet. And Valter Walker has probably some upside for potential to be good. He's 26. He's young. He's probably hungry, KOing everybody. Maybe not the best competition, but he still is KOing everybody. I think he beats Lukas Brzeski in the first round. If not, then I'm just an idiot. And heavyweights are just absolutely cooked. We need a new heavyweight prospect, and maybe it can be Valter Walker. And I'm betting on him to be the new heavyweight prospect that happens in the UFC. Moving on, up the card. We have Ignacio Bahomondes versus Christos Giagos. I'm taking Bahomondes here. Giagos actually impressed me with one fight that he had. It was against Ricky Glenn, but Ricky Glenn looked slow, looked awful in that fight. But Giagos has been a perennial mid fighter, a perennial just guy who hasn't really done anything with his career. He's losing to Yago Moises, losing to Armin Sarukian. Like, it isn't like he's anything crazy, but he did look good against Ricky Glenn. He did look pretty good against Zell Huber in that first round before he got finished. But Giagos is just that perennial average fighter now, I believe. And Bahomondes, even though I have cooled off on him, he still is pretty decent. Like, that KO over Roosevelt Roberts was good. Rong Zhu, I guess that's a good win. I guess Trey Ogden is a pretty solid win. Ogden's actually a good win to have on your resume, and he outstruck him. So, like, Ogden is, if you're trying to find a reason to pick Bahomondes, it's because he beat Trey Ogden. Simple as that. And Giagos has been average. He's over the hill. I agree with you, Cranium. I don't think he's ever been on the hill, but I think that he is over the hill. I think Bahomondes beats him up. The reach for Bahomondes, he's 6'3" with 75.5 inch reach, while Giagos has a 71.5 inch reach. I just don't believe that Giagos is going to be able to, I guess, find the inside versus Bahomondes. Bahomondes is actually pretty good at keeping range and staying on the back foot and landing shots. Like, Bahomondes is actually pretty decent. Is he going to be this next huge prospect in the UFC? No way. La Huala is not going to be that huge next champion unless he improves, but he is only 26, not in his prime yet, so he might have more time to improve and eventually get into the rankings. I think he does find his way into the rankings maybe in like a few years at lightweight, or he might just be that perennial average, that Drew Dober type guy, but not obviously with Drew Dober style, because Dober is going to, put your lights out, and Bahomondes doesn't have much power. Obviously, you know what I mean by the Drew Dober comparison, like, is always going to be good, but never going to be good enough to be in the rankings at UFC or the top 10 in the rankings at lightweight. It is what it is. But I think Giagos loses to Bahomondes. I think that his skill and his age is not on his favor. 2011, Never been that good in the UFC. Always been pretty average. I think Bahomondes at least has some potential. The range advantage over Giagos, it's going to be hard for me on the inside. I don't see Giagos getting any takedowns on Bahomondes. He has good takedown defense. I think Bahomondes gets this one done by minorly outstriking Giagos every single round to win a 30-27 decision. Just barely getting a win. And yeah, that's pretty much how it's going to be. Bahomondes by decision. Moving on, up the card, we have Morgan Charrierre versus Chepe Mariscal. Now, Morgan Charrierre is kind of a tricky prospect to really analyze, man. I don't think Morgan Charrierre is anything too crazy. Like, he fought at Cage Warriors. He beat Manolo Zecchini, which was an Italian guy. He fought on that Paris card back 6 months ago. Like, he's 19-9. He's improved. And Mariscal is not bad. Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of weird to really predict this one. I don't know who to pick here, man. This is kind of a really tricky fight to pick. I don't know. Morgan Charrierre, does he really even deserve to be in the UFC? They kind of just put him in. I feel like there were other Cage Warrior fighters who deserve to be in the UFC over Morgan Charrierre. Kind of just got signed, no Contender Series fight. Just got signed to the UFC to fight Manolo Zecchini. I don't know how he got into the UFC. Lost to Paul Hughes by decision. Wasn't Chepe Mariscal beating Jack Jenkins before that fluke finish, before he broke his arm with the judo throw? I feel like he was mildly still outstriking him. It's just a really tough way to pick because Mariscal, I think, is decent in his own right. Like, he's not bad at all. And like, he's proved to me that he is, I think, UFC level. Like, I think he can, I wouldn't say he can go far in the UFC, especially at featherweight because it's a tough division, but I think that he is a decent featherweight that can be in the UFC for a little bit. You know what I mean? Well, Morgan Charrierre hasn't proved that to me yet, and I think beating that Zecchini guy was just a layup matchup for him for the UFC to get a French fighter a win. I'm going to take Morgan Charrierre only for the fact that I believe the UFC gets what they want. And they need more French talent. They want to go back to Paris. They need more French talent to support a card. Cirogan is not doing them any favors right now with all of these declinations or him declining all these fights against top heavyweights. So I think the UFC knows something that we don't. And they believe Morgan Charrierre can beat Chepe Mariscal because they want him to be a big name to help out the French cards. And even though I believe this fight is truly 50-50, you can pick wherever you want to pick. They both have their advantages and their disadvantages. I think Charrierre has the UFC support, and I believe that is enough to pick Charrierre to beat Chepe Mariscal. I'm taking Morgan Charrierre off of a hunch. Moving on, up the card, we got Alexander Hernandez versus Damon Jackson. Now, Hernandez is kind of dog water, and so is Damon Jackson. I don't believe either of these guys deserve to be in a co-main event spot of a fight night. Now, Hernandez is that typical fighter who is very fast twitchy in the first round, who can put your lights out in the first round. He's just overall in the first round very, very dangerous. And Damon Jackson's more of that grappler, that grinded out guy. He's going to grapple you up and then submit you with an arm triangle once you get too tired. But Damon Jackson does seem to not have the best chin. And I think in the first round, Hernandez will be good enough to stuff his takedowns and then KO him in the first round. But I think the style to beat Hernandez is to be a striker predominantly and to have that really tough style to survive the first round, right? I think if you're going to beat Hernandez, you need to be like a really tough guy with a great chin, which is what Billy Q has, right? Billy Q has that sort of style where he's a great chin. Well, back a year ago, or he's made to beat Hernandez, or he has a really tough chin. If it goes outside the first round, he's probably going to beat Hernandez because Hernandez gas tank isn't that crazy. Bill Aljo's kind of the same thing. He's a kind of fighter who is going to survive a first round versus Hernandez and then beat him as the fight goes on. But can Damon Jackson do that? And I think on the feet, there's too many holes with Damon Jackson. He strikes too stiff. He's a bit too slow. It's very basic striking, nothing too crazy. His chin, isn't the best as well. I believe his chin is worse than Billy Q's and Bill Aljo's at the time. I don't care if Bill Aljo recently got KO'd. It doesn't matter to me. I still think Bill Aljo's chin is better than Damon Jackson. Jackson got put out pretty bad versus Dan Ige and Topuria a while ago. If you remember that finish, it was a body shot to a right hand finish against Topuria. I'm going to trust Hernandez to get this one done by first round KO. I think he'll stuff Damon Jackson's takedowns if he does shoot them. And if it's on the feet in the first round, I believe Hernandez can get it done by first round KO. It does worry me though. If this fight does go past the first round, then I guess live bet on Damon Jackson. But I think Hernandez is just athletic enough to get it done versus Damon Jackson in the first round. He's also 35. Damon Jackson is. He's going to be slower than Hernandez by a lot, who was very fast twitchy again in that first round. Moving on up the card to the main event, Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis 2. I don't think Chris Curtis is going to get lucky. I'm not lucky. I don't think Chris Curtis is going to be able to repeat the KO performance he had against Brendan Allen. I think when Chris Curtis first fought Brendan Allen, there was kind of that surprise factor with Chris Curtis. You know what I mean? Like, he just came into the UFC. He beat Phil Hawes on short notice, and Phil Hawes has no chin. So it was kind of like, is Chris Curtis, like, you couldn't put too much respect on Chris Curtis just yet. Like, I don't think Brendan Allen really expected to get KO'd by Chris Curtis. He just didn't expect it. I think he was younger. I think he was in his own head a little bit because Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland are friends, and Strickland and Allen have beef. And now that has translated to Allen and Curtis having beef. And I think he got in his own head in that matchup as well. And that just kind of really messed him up. And I think he was a little bit emotional fighting Chris Curtis the first time. And again, that was a younger Brendan Allen. He's 28 now. He's been improving a little bit, while Chris Curtis has kind of stayed the same, and maybe has even gotten a bit worse. I don't think Chris Curtis is the same guy that he was when he first fought Brendan Allen. He's taken some damage in his career. Like when he fought Imavov, it was a clash of heads, but it seemed like he just couldn't find the range versus Imavov, which is how Imavov fights. When he fought Gastelum, he got dropped with a headbutt, I believe, against Gastelum. Like, it's just very tough to analyze if Chris Curtis has gotten better. And I like Chris Curtis. He's a Cincinnati boy. I believe he trained at the gym down the street from me a while ago. Not there anymore, obviously. He's Extreme Couture, but I think early in his career, he was training in Cincinnati. And that makes me want to root for him. But I think, again, with his... There's a certain attitude that Chris Curtis has, right? Whenever he starts losing a fight, he gets very pissy. He gets very emotional. He gets very upset. And he starts throwing the fight pretty much. He gets very tilted and just quits. Not quit, but he gets very tilted and he just starts half-assing it. And I think if he's losing at any point versus Brendan Allen, who is going to be taller, not as rangy, surprisingly, because actually Chris Curtis has the reach advantage over him. But if at any point Chris Curtis is getting down versus Brendan Allen, I can just see him throwing a hissy fit and possibly losing. And I think since Brendan Allen got KO'd by Chris Curtis the first time, I think he'll be more willing to have that Jack Hermanson style where he sits on the outside and just picks at Chris Curtis, because I don't think he's taking Chris Curtis down. Chris Curtis has probably some of the best takedown defense in the UFC. There's just no way you're taking down Chris Curtis. I don't think Brendan Allen's going to sit there. If Brendan Allen goes out there and he tries to take down Chris Curtis for 5 rounds, he's going to fucking get KO'd again. But if he goes out there and just fights smart and doesn't try to box in the phone booth with Chris Curtis, I think he can outstrike him for 5 rounds, honestly, and maybe get a finish. I don't know. Brendan Allen having the Oliveira career comeback, yeah. 11-2 in the UFC is impressive, yes. Brendan Allen is good. Brendan Allen is actually a really decent fighter. Like, he isn't bad. I don't like his style too much. I don't think he'll ever be champion in the UFC, especially at middleweight. But he can be a top 5 guy. If Vettori can be a top 5 guy, I think Allen can be a top 5 guy. Let's be real here. But again, Chris Curtis doesn't just have enough improvement over the years since he last fought Brendan Allen to think that I can pick him to beat Brendan Allen. That's just the tough part about it. Chris Curtis probably can KO him again. Honestly, it's possible. Again, if Brendan Allen goes out there with a terrible game plan, just take downs for 5 rounds, I think he gets put down by Chris Curtis. But if he fights smart and is intelligent, I think he's improved enough to outstrike Chris Curtis. This might be a shit card. I know I've picked a ton of fights by decision. I don't think I'm going to be perfectly accurate with all of these. But I think I'm going to go with the safe pick of saying Allen wins by decision. But that concludes all of my picks. Real quick, anybody, if you want to join the Topology group, let me find it real quick. I'm having a terrible time on picks. Not bueno for me. If you want to join my Topology group, let me find it. My group's here. It's called Kindle Sticks. I don't know why I named it that, but you can find it here. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you want to join that, you can keep track of my picks and other people's picks as well. And yeah, we can all have a fun time in the group. Kindle Sticks sounds pretty sus. It's not sus. It's not sus. But thank you guys so much. But this pretty much concludes my full card prediction and breakdown for UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis 2. Thank you guys so much for watching this live stream if you're in here, and the video if you're watching it currently right now. So like, subscribe, bell icon for notifications. I'm out of here, guys. Peace.